You are listening to the Bitter Medicine Podcast on KWAZ Radio. Welcome to the Bitter Medicine Podcast, where it's all about Black empowerment. Our show focuses on Black news and entertainment, arts, science, economics, history, people, and strategies that uplift, empower, and motivate Africans within the diaspora. And now, your host, whose favorite color is black, Goku.
Yes, indeed. Welcome back to the Bitter Medicine Podcast. I am your host, Koku. Glad to have everyone returning who's here with us live today already. We should have a pretty short show, but pretty important one at the same time. I want to shout out to all those brothers who came on the live last time we did the show, where we were talking about what is an NFT, and we were talking about blockchain and crypto, etc. Those guys really made the show great with their knowledge. As a matter of fact, A-Love Supreme, Derrico Cooper Photography, and Machiavelli, those guys have continued actually doing work in the Discord. So if you are not on our Discord, I suggest you join the Discord. If you go to our Discord on the bookshelves, there's a shelf there called Crypto Library, and up until this evening, those brothers have been posting a bunch of links, a bunch of PDFs, Google Drives with textbooks on crypto, etc. I suggest you guys really go through there, right, and check out all of the information that's been posted. I mean, that night after the show, I went on and looked through some of the textbooks, did some reading, clicked some of the links that Machiavelli posted, and now I'm looking at what Derrico Cooper Photography is posted, also known as General Abzu, and it's just like how to earn free Bitcoin PDF and the insider's guide to making a fortune from small tech. And I mean, deep stuff that I'm sure everyone will be able to get something out of, right? So you guys make sure go in and check out that bookshelf. As a matter of fact, you can actually follow the Crypto Library bookshelf, right? You could actually follow and be notified, because it's an announcement channel. You can be notified when something else has been posted. So you guys should really go in and check that out. I see in the chat room we have the pro-black perspective with Oni Tase. Peace to you, Oni. Thanks for coming through. But yeah, like I was saying, go join the Discord now. I think the link was posted earlier. Let me make sure of that. Let me post it myself. Right, there's the link. You guys head on over to the Bitter Medicine Podcast server on Discord, and you have access to all that information. And we're constantly building it up, right? We're constantly making improvements, adding new things. So you should see a lot of new features over the next couple months, a lot of new and great information as well. All right. Before I go any further, I want to remind you guys that this show is part of a podcast network called KWAZ Radio. You guys should be tuning in to the other shows on KWAZ Radio, like, for example,
This is DAX. You tune into the Harsh Reality Podcast, providing you with social commentary on the news affecting our community, only on KWAZ Radio.
Peace, family. This is Oni, inviting you to listen to the pro-black perspective, where black problems are addressed with black solutions.
You are listening to the Bitter Medicine Podcast on KWAZ Radio.
And also check out the Queen's Council podcast on KWAZ Radio. All good shows, all good content, different content. And I think that's one of the beauties of the shows that are here so far. We all do slightly different things, talk about different things, and by the same time, it's all about blackness. We don't promote any white type of bullshit on the podcast network, and that should be appreciated. In the chat room, I see NYC Beauties is back. Saying greetings to NYC Beauties. Kevin Care 42 is here. Peace to Kevin Care 42. And all you guys who are always recurring, peace to you guys as well, man. It's always appreciative to see you guys. I saw a post today from the Pro-Black Perspective that he's doing a debate on April 4th at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You guys should make sure go to his social media. Go to his channel, and you could set up your reminders now for that debate. Black Excellence is also in the room, saying peace to everyone. Peace to you too, right? You guys go and check that out. I'm curious to know what the format of that debate is. Is there a moderator, etc., etc.? By the way, if you're here listening to the show, make sure you hit the like button. Oftentimes we have way more people in the live show listening than there are people who are hitting the like button. The like button helps the channel, and it's the same thing for the other shows on KWAZ Radio. Make sure you guys click the like buttons on those shows. If you're not subscribed, subscribe. Click the bell to be notified when new content posts. And also, leave comments, man. Leave comments. I mean, it could be good, bad, or indifferent. Just leave a comment, and I'm sure all of the hosts of all these shows would love to respond to your comments. Okay, so did I have it right? Debate at 3 p.m. April 4th, right? I think I said that, 3 p.m. EST. We'll have a moderator, and that moderator will be Machiavelli, who's on the show, the last episode of the show. So that's cool. That's very cool. I look forward to tuning into that. I hope you guys do too. All right. So on today's show, we're reading an older paper about the trouble with Nigeria. If you've been paying attention, we know that there's still trouble in Nigeria. Even though this is an older paper, the trouble hasn't ceased. And the reality of it is, if you go on social media where we get a diverse group of people, there's Nigerians every day on social media like Twitter who feel like Nigeria will cease to exist soon enough, right? I'm curious to know, what are your guys' thoughts on the state of Nigeria? And when we read through this paper, I'd like to hear from you guys if you think that what this paper is talking about back in the day, right? Is it the same going on today? Right? Is it the same thing going on today? This paper, I believe, is from in the 2000s, 2005. So is it exactly the same issue today? So we see it's a review essay, The Trouble with Nigeria, and we see there's a couple of contributors to this paper, right? So let's start to get into the paper, I guess. Let's start to get into the paper. So Nigeria remains one of the most important and fascinating countries in Africa, with abundant human and material resources. If these could be harnessed effectively, Nigeria could easily become one of the most influential countries in the world. The country has played a leadership role in everything from the liberation of Southern Africa to the formation of the Economic Community of West African States, or KWAZ, and the African Union, and the attempted stabilization of Liberia and other states in the region. The decline of Nigeria, although not as severe as the decline and even collapse of other states in Africa, has saddened all who love her and disheartened all who had hoped for great things from independent Africa. Today, Nigeria is better known for the scam spam that clutters up internet mailboxes around the world than for its great authors, musicians, and other creative people. Massive investments in industry have failed to industrialize the country. The hope of post-Biafra oil boom Nigeria has given way to cynicism, corruption, and despair. Some would say, let me see what this paper says, some would say the oil boom is a great problem with Nigeria, right? The great religiosity of Nigerians has become less a call to righteousness than a reason to murder followers of other religions. Who can ponder Confucius's famous statement that the material prosperity of a country does not consist in material prosperity, but in righteousness, without thinking of Nigeria? Understanding the decline is not quite yet, if not quite yet fall of Nigeria, is one of the most important tasks facing Africanist scholars today. You guys who are here live with me in the chat room, what are your thoughts on, or how do you see the fall of Nigeria? Like, what are the reasons for the fall of Nigeria? You guys post that in the chat room. I'll read it live on here. If journalism is the first draft of history, the books under review here represent its second draft. They're all concerned with recent events in Nigeria, are written by social scientists and historians, and often use journalistic accounts as primary sources. They seek to make sense of the recent past in order to help readers understand contemporary events in Nigeria. All make important contributions to our understanding of recent developments in Nigeria, though in different ways. Probably the most useful book to the widest number of readers of the African Studies Review would be Troubled Journey, Nigeria Since the Civil War. It is a reference history of Nigeria over the past few decades and incorporates most of the events and personalities that those writing about or working in Nigeria need to know. It could well serve as a textbook for political science classes about Nigeria or Africa in general. Good stuff right there, right? We always talk about we need more textbooks for our people, for our students, right? So let's keep that one in mind. I'll look that up later. The book opens with 2 survey chapters to set the context. The first dealing with Nigeria before independence, and the second with Nigeria after independence. Then follow 9 chapters about post-Civil War Nigeria, organized by administration or regime, with a concluding chapter speculating on the future of Nigeria. Troubled Journey not only contains much important information, it also makes a number of important analytical points. The authors note that Nigeria, both as a colony as an independent country, has been dominated by the military at the same time. The politicization of the military has led to a militarization of Nigerian politics. Indeed, when I was in Nigeria in 2000, many people commented that the long experience of different military regimes had left Nigeria without distinct civilian political parties, but with a military divided clearly into a more conservative, repressive party, right, like dominant in the Buhari and Abacha regimes, and a more liberal, tolerant party, like dominant in the Obasanjo, and Babangida regimes. When I returned in 2004, Nigerians explained that the liberal military party had metamorphosed into the ruling PDP, whereas the conservative military party had become the All Nigerian People's Party, each of which had run former military heads of state for president in 2003. Essays in the book make clear that the military had been running a unitary state in disguise, and that therefore democratization led to centrifugal tendencies. Ironically, this contradicts a basic premise of the book, stated at its beginning, which is that the Nigerian quote-unquote nation is somehow a natural phenomenon whose coming together might have happened without colonialism. That's an interesting line. This is not the only flaw in the book. More serious is the fact that it does not reflect what Nigerians refer to as federal character. All of the authors are Southern Nigerians, most of them Igbo, right? As the ethnonym is spelled in the book. This is not to suggest that Igbo perspectives are irrelevant to understanding Nigeria. Indeed, the failure of Nigeria to effectively use the many talents of the Igbo people is one of the major problems of contemporary Nigeria, and a major reason why so many writers of this book are working as expatriate scholars in North America. However, the statement on page 1, quote, that the conventional thinking that regards Nigeria as a mere historical expression is flawed, end of quote, and that there exists, quote, in fact, a natural unity to Nigerian history and geography, end of quote. It's not only contrary to the feelings of the Yoruba followers of Obafemi Awolowo, not to mention other Nigerians. It is a misunderstanding of the nature of states and the method by which the Nigerian Federation was created. So, hold on. Let me peep something real quick. Yeah, so Obafemi was a Nigerian nationalist statesman who played a key role in Nigeria's independence movement, the First and Second Republics, and the Civil War. I just wanted to make sure I had to remember that correct. Right? Coming from erstwhile Biafrans, this position is strange to the point of surrealism, although one should know that it seems to originate in Nnamdi Azikiwe's early position as opposed to Awolowo's support of a nationalities policy for Nigeria. The absence of northern voices in the book leads to statements about the North that are questionable at best and should have been challenged. For example, the idea that the House of Fulani have monopolized all power in Nigeria since independence is a popular one in Nigeria, but one that has been questioned by many. So the thing with Nigeria, right, is the way it was created, again, these artificial borders and stuff, the way it was created, it encapsulated a lot of tribes, a lot of different tribes, right? And the idea that I think most people, well, not most people, but the idea I think a lot of people have about Nigeria is that tribalism, which is what Africa is pinned with all the time, that tribalism is the reason for these failed states. What they don't talk about, though, is how these states came to be bordered. How were they created, right? It was the colonizers who created these states, right, with complete disregard to the different peoples it put, under this quote unquote umbrella of a nation, right? And so now we have, what could be long-running, animosities between different peoples, etc. We have that, showing its head, because the thing about, leadership and government is usually there's one guy at the top, and that one guy is going to look out for his people, right? That one guy is going to look out for his people. So if this guy is House of Fulani, right, then, if this guy is House of Fulani and most of the people are House of Fulani, for example, right, then those folks are going to monopolize power. And in the chat room, I hear the pro-black perspective says that Fulani comment is something I hear a lot repeating today. Yeah, that's what you always hear, right? And so this becomes a problem. Now, I posted this as a poll a couple weeks ago. No one responded. But I was curious to know, like, for the continental African, what is most important to the continental African? Is it the continent? Is it their nation? Or is it their tribe? Is it the continent that's most important? Is it the nation, say Nigeria, right? Or is it the tribe, say, Fulani, Hausa, Yoruba, right? What is the most important thing to the continental African? Now, if you guys in the chat room have an idea of that answer, it'll be interesting to see what your answers are, because no one responded when I asked the question. Right? Again, no one really sees me on social media, right? But I'm just saying, no one responded, and I'm very curious to see, because as I see it, or as it appears to me, and again, I have to take it with a grain of salt, because it's through these other people's media that I'm seeing it, right? But it seems to me like the average person from the continent is more concerned with their tribe. You guys let me know if you think that's true or not. Similarly, the analysis of the imposition of criminal Sharia laws in many northern states fails to provide a real understanding of the issue, repeating instead the hysterical claims of many Southerners who have not read the laws in question and do not realize how carefully crafted they were to avoid conflict with the Nigerian Constitution. The conventional wisdom about the Sharia issue, quote, that religion is being used as an opiate of the people, may be the conventional wisdom of Southerners, but it is not that of any Northerners or even, quote unquote, middle belters with whom I have spoken. The problems of criminality and vice are real in Nigeria, and criminal Sharia is a popular solution among the Northern Muslims at the present time. So we see that there's a Islam problem in Nigeria as well. This is an issue on which the masses have been ahead of their leaders, and the enactment of Sharia is arguably the most democratic and truly federal thing that has been accomplished in the current Nigerian Republic. Whether Sharia law is a good idea is, of course, another issue entirely. But it is ironic to hear many Nigerians calling for true federalism with one breath and decrying Sharia laws in the north with the other. This review would also like to have seen more discussion of General Babangida's failed transition to democracy. Not that Nigerians have not already said plenty about the cancellation of the June 12th elections, but this cancellation has too often been presented, even by those who should have known better, purely as Hausa versus Yoruba battle. The positions of Igbo intellectuals deserve to have a better airing, especially if they see the tragedy from a different perspective. Crafting the new Nigeria presents more varied perspectives from both expatriate scholars and Nigerians, including a lone northerner. It is of most interest, as the title implies, to those concerned that the nation-building school of social engineering and it assembles a wide range of distinguished experts to ponder the mistakes made in building the Nigerian nation to date. So let me stop here for one quick second and look up something. All right. I should have had this set up already, right? So Nigeria is what you would call a multinational state, right? Inhabited by more than 250 ethnic groups, right? 500 distinct languages, all identifying with a wide variety of cultures. The three largest ethnic groups are the Hausa Fulani in the north, Yoruba in the west, Igbo in the east, right? And those three take up 60% of the total population. The official language in Nigeria is English, because, well, we know why, right? Nigeria is roughly divided in half, 50-50 Muslims who live mostly in the north and Christians who live mostly in the south. It has the world's 5th largest Muslim population and 6th largest Christian population, with a minority practicing indigenous religions such as those native to the Igbo and Yoruba ethnicities. Nigeria's constitution ensures freedom of religion. Nigeria is the most populous country in Africa and the 7th most populous country in the world, with an estimated 206 million inhabitants as of late 2019. It has the 3rd largest youth population in the world after India and China. So that youth population, right? A lot of people were one time saying that, well, the youth are going to save Nigeria. This was a couple years ago. And now today they're saying that the problem is so far gone that the youth can't even fix it. Right? Because with youth there's supposed to be a change in the old thinking. And then now they're saying that the youth can't even fix the problem. Right? Nigeria's economy is the largest in Africa and the 24th largest in the world. So it moved up, because a couple years back it was like 30th, right? Worth almost 450 billion and 1 trillion in terms of nominal GDP and purchasing power parity, respectively. Nigeria is often referred to as the giant of Africa, owing to its large population and economy, and is also considered to be an emerging market by the World Bank. It has been identified as a regional power on the African continent, a middle power in international affairs, and has also been identified as an emerging global power. However, its Human Development Index ranks 158th in the world, and the country is classified as a lower middle income economy, with a gross national income per capita between $1,026 and $3,986. So, when you talk about British colonization, Nigeria had been under the British, and the British divided up, even in creating Nigeria, they kind of divided it up into north, south, west, etc. If you look at the history, right? They had a federation and independence in 1960. Nigeria gained independence from the United Kingdom on October 1st, 1960, as the Federation of Nigeria, while retaining the British monarch Elizabeth II as nominal head of state and Queen of Nigeria. Independent Nigeria's founding government was a coalition of conservative parties, right? A bunch of parties, and they had these political differences being sharp among Nigeria's dominant ethnic groups: House of Fulani, the Northerners; Igbo, the Easterners; Yoruba, the Westerners. An imbalance was created in the polity by the result of the 1961 plebiscite. Southern Cameroons, since renamed by separatists as Ambazonia, I didn't even know that, opted to join the Republic of Cameroon, while Northern Cameroon chose to join Nigeria. The northern part of the country then became larger than the southern part. In 1963, the nation established a federal republic with Azikiwe as its first president. When relations were held in 1965, the Nigerian National Democratic Party came to power in Nigeria's western region. So that's really the issues that you see going on. Usually the current issues are historic issues, right? You go back and you realize what's really going on historically, and that will explain what's going on now, right? And so after that bit that I just read, there's a series of infighting, right? And the creation of new republics and whatnot in Nigeria. And I'm sorry to say it, but any nation that has that kind of history likely won't really stand long enough, right? That's one of the things America tries its best to not have again, a civil war. Because once that stuff starts happening, you have the problem of maintaining that nation, right? So to continue now with the paper. So that gives you some background of the paper. You have the ethnic issue, right? And historically, you have the issue, because of the ethnic issue, you have this issue of different powers coming into being, a lot of different militaries having to come up to back these different powers. So that history is one of those histories, and we see that. To be frank, we saw that even when we read about the Monroe Plan in Haiti. You see that in Haiti as well. There's a lot of turnover, instability, a lot of military action going on. Usually, those don't bode well for a nation. I read someone saying one time that the point of nationhood is to develop peace amongst the people, right? Some of you might disagree with that, but I think when you look at the history, there's some truth to that, right? Anyway, as a product of a Confederate held at Harvard's Kennedy School of Government, the collection not only reflects the wisdom of the conferences, but also their interactions with each other, with copious cross-references between chapters. It is not intended to be a comprehensive reference work, but rather a series of attempts to diagnose what has gone wrong with Nigeria and to prescribe solutions for the future. This breadth of analysis and information makes the book indispensable for anyone interested in understanding Nigerian politics. Indeed, it should be required reading not only for political scientists specializing in Nigeria, but also for diplomats, NGO workers, expatriate businessmen, and others who need to understand the political economy of Nigeria today. It should also be published in a Nigerian edition available to administrators and voters there. The thoughts this book will provoke are many. For example, a recurring theme, implicitly or explicitly, is that there is a fundamental contradiction between the federal nature of the Nigerian polity and the unitary nature of its funding. 95% of Nigeria's foreign exchange comes from the oil revenues accruing to the federal government. This is what I talked about before. Some people blame the oil as a problem. Federal funds are then dispersed to state and local governments, which have become dependent on oil money from the federal coffers for their existence. But the formula for disbursing such funds is one of the most contentious issues in Nigerian politics. This is essential to the issues of federalism and state creation in Nigeria, as is the more frequently studied issues of ethnicity. Well, see, so that goes back to what I was saying earlier. If you look at a place like Trinidad, for example, Trinidad has Jamaica too, but Trinidad has greater proportions, right? Trinidad has a large African versus Indian population, right? Jamaicans make it seem like Jamaica has this huge Indian population, but it doesn't. It has an Indian population similar to the Bahamas, something like 2% or something like that, right? But Trinidad and them, we're talking like 30%, 30 and 40%. And what you find is in the two-party system that's there, what you find is one party is heavily supported by Indians, one party is heavily supported by the Africans. And if the Indian party is in power, well, forget about it. If you're an African, don't expect to see nothing much happen for your constituency, right? And vice versa. And so they have this continuous back and forth in Trinidad. Fortunately, it doesn't come to war, right? But a part of Trinidad not being one of the richest, and they have oil and natural gas and all that stuff. And one of the reasons why they, because of that infighting and that political back and forth going on there, Trinidad has fallen. Trinidad used to be way high up there in terms of like a model nation in the Caribbean, and it's kind of fallen off because of it, right? You can't have within a nation, you have to have peace, or as close to peace as possible, right? Otherwise, you're gonna have the same problems you see in Nigeria or say Trinidad today, right? And a lot of it is a racial or ethnic problem. In Nigeria, it's more so an ethnic problem. I can bet you money that the reason that this oil money is distributed or dispersed funny is along ethnic lines. And again, I ask the question, is continental Africa more about, what do they uphold more first? Is it the continent? Is it their tribe, right? Or is it their nation? What do they uphold the most? Let me pause here for a quick station ID break, and on the other side, we'll finish off this paper.
You are listening to the Bitter Medicine Podcast on KWAZ Radio.
This is DAX. You tune into the Harsh Reality Podcast, providing you with social commentary on the news affecting our community, only on KWAZ Radio.
Peace, family. This is Oni, inviting you to listen to the pro-black perspective, where black problems are addressed with black solutions.
You are listening to the Bitter Medicine Podcast on KWAZ Radio.
Make sure to also check out the Queen's Council podcast, also on KWAZ Radio. So this looking at Nigeria again, a nation on the brink, it seems, in the continent, is important for us outside of the continent as well. Like I saw Onita say from the pro-black perspective post recently, maybe even today, he said, wherever you want to go in Africa, wherever you want to repatriate to, study or at least read its constitution, right? That's going to be important. But if the issue with that is a constitution can, listen, they got people who will write these documents, and they can write these documents to sound like the sweetest mix ever. When in reality, though, the Constitution doesn't deal with or address issues of ethnicity. within the nation. They'll make it seem like everyone is, because again, using Trinidad as the example, they'll make it seem like everyone is cool here. It's all about the people here, regardless to ethnicity and religion. But in reality, the power brokers, the people in positions of leadership, tend to push, that ethnicity issue, right? So it's important to, yes, read those documents, but also important to pay attention to the track record, right? Read the documents, I agree 100%, but also understand that folks don't always live by those documents. You got to really look into, right, talk to the people, right, and look into what's going on. And that's, to me, I'll just say this here now, to me, that's the biggest issue in the continent. At first, I thought it was, other people were placing that on Africa, but I realized that there's some truth to what's going on here. There's a heavy ethnic, tribal warfare. Buju Banton had a song back in the early 90s called Tribal War. And there was a reason that he wrote that song back then. It's still true today, right? There's a tribal war that goes on. And so when you talk about power dynamics, a lot of the power dynamics in the continent seems to be along the lines of tribal. Those of us from outside of the continent will return there and be looked at as another tribe. We got to fix this tribal issue, right? We have to fix this tribal issue. And I'm not foolish enough to think that we can completely fix it, but something has to change with how we conduct business in an African nation. To continue, the three other books under review here are much shorter and more specialized. In the first of the two, from the Nordic Africa Institute, Ao Olikotun looks at the repression of the Nigerian media under both General Babangida and General Abacha. This will be an especially useful work for those who will compile the inevitable third draft of Nigeria's history. They will need to evaluate their sources carefully, but Nigerian press has always presented problems. While it is highly developed and has a strong tradition of independence, its accuracy is less certain than its freedom. It faced trying times, first under Buhari, and then under the later Babangida regime, as well as under Abacha. The economic problems of Nigeria have also adversely affected the press. Readership has declined, and media outlets have had to support themselves by off-market infusions of funds. See, that's not good. That is not good. When your media is funded by others, right? That messes with its accuracy, right? If a free press is really a market-regulated press, the Nigerian press is more than free, for declining readership has not affected the profitability of some publications. This extension of Nigeria's endemic corruption into the fourth estate has unfortunately left it unable to perform its traditional function of exposing corruption. One result has been a further decline in readership, leading to a vicious circle in which even the literary quality of many newspapers and magazines has suffered. The recent explosion of internet use is promising to shake up the Nigerian information landscape even more radically in the future. Oludekun's book is good on detail and nuance, and in several places it specifically rejects the facile misreading of the June 12th crisis as an ethno-sectional one. I was particularly pleased to read the details of such incredible happenings as the state's security services publication of fake editions of Tell magazine. One edition of News magazine actually announced on its cover that it was a banned publication. Stopping Nigerians from saying what they want to say is simply impossible. I've been there under both Buhari and Abacha and know that criticism of the government is going to come out whether the government likes it or not. desktop publishing and the internet make it even more difficult to suppress freedom of the press. I hope the Nigerian government has finally just given up. Osita Agbu's study highlights another problem of Nigeria: the appearance of ethnic militias in parts of the country. Post-Biafra Nigeria has not had state police, primarily because the northern regional police were unpopular in large areas of the former northern region. This constitutes a major flaw in Nigerian federalism, arguably leaving the constituent parts of the federation without the partial sovereignty that is indispensable to true federalism. This vacuum has been filled in part by such local militias as the Bakassi Boys, the Egbesu Boys, the Chikoko Movement, and the Oduwa People's Congress. The failure and corruption of the Nigerian Federal Police have given such local militias much popularity. Agbu includes the Arera People's Congress in his list of militias, but this probably betrays a lack of familiarity with the North. The equivalent of these local militias in the North would have to be the various Sharia enforcement groups that have been set up. If the Nigerian Federation finally collapses, these various local militias will probably constitute the successor states. In Democratic Rule in Nigeria, Timothy Saror paints a short but detailed portrait of Nigeria in decline. This is a study of Obasanjo's second coming as a civilian elected president, rather than a military head of state, and it is organized thematically. After an opening look at the collapse that occurred after Abacha's death and the hurried transition that swept Obasanjo into office, chapters follow on political, social, and economic developments, as well as one on international relations. Saror mentions the existence not only of local militias, but also of private armies of thugs. And we heard about this recently coming out of Nigeria, right? Indeed, the incidence of political assassinations in Nigeria is appalling. Sometime after the publication of this book, the federal attorney general himself was gunned down in his own bedroom. Although the outspokenness of many Nigerians may be a good sign for democratization, the increasing level of political violence is not. At the same time, the very level of violence and crime has led many Nigerians to support local militia groups. Cicero makes a number of other good points, such as connecting the implementation of Sharia law with the increasing demands of southern states for control of their oil wealth. He also points out that many governors use the cover of true federalism to borrow an immense amount of money, pocketing the loot, and leaving the federal government with the bill. The Nigerian textile industry, once thriving and hoping to lead an export boom, has almost collapsed under the dumping of Chinese textiles, which is a Western, just a side note, this has been a long time Western type thing to do, right? Africa would have these booming textile industry or these growing textile industries, and they'll come and flood it with some cheap Chinese shit, right? One of the few bright spots is the absence of media closings or detentions of journalists since Obasanjo's return to power. While some politicians have sponsored violence against their opponents, no such charge has been directed at Obasanjo. True, the elections of 1993 were not the best in Nigeria's history, but there's little doubt that Obasanjo still enjoys broad support among many Nigerians. The major complaint against him in this book is that his treatment of the grievances of certain minority groups, in particular the Tiv and the Ijaw, has not made him popular with them. The treatment of minorities is of course a problem in any system of majority rule. It has also been a perennial problem in Nigeria and will continue to be so into the foreseeable future. See, I like to I like to read about like potential solutions to a problem. You know, how do you fix that problem? Right? That's a question I have. Okay, I get majority rule and all this kind of stuff, but how do you fix the problem of the small man, right? The minority group, right? Just being completely mistreated just because they don't have the numbers. I know, and they'll never have the numbers, right, for majority rule. So what do you do? How do you fix that? Right? That's my big question. How do you fix that? All of these books have some surprising omissions. The fact that the military has always insisted on an executive president over the objections of the civilian politicians is never touched upon, despite the fact that many authors comment on the common, allegedly frivolous impeachment moves, not only against various state governors, but even against Obasanjo himself. While charges of impeachment may or may not be justified, in many cases they seem to be at least partly motivated by a desire to make the executive subordinate to the legislature instead of an independent organ of government. This phenomenon underscores the need for a real understanding of the quote-unquote American system Nigeria has adopted, ironically, on the order of General Murtala Muhammad. So that's something to look into. The most anti-American president Nigeria ever had, General Murtala Muhammad. The most anti-American president Nigeria ever had, but yet took up a quote-unquote American system of government. That's interesting. Whatever the country, the executive is such an important prize that it pressures politicians into two parties. Certain features of the Nigerian constitution, along with the fractured nature of its contentious body politic, have worked against this tendency. Nigerian politicians and the public need to have a better understanding of how the American system works and how their own differs from it in many details. Also not really dealt with in any of these books is the question of whether nation building works at all. Okay. The authors in the Wachikuku Izoigwe volume assume that Nigeria is a natural nation and does not need to be built. Well, that's just, okay. The authors of most of the other works under review here, especially the Rothberg volume, assume that nation building can succeed if the right formula can be found. It is a cliche of the independence era that it was much easier for Africans to make the leap from local and ethnic allegiances to a sense of Pan-African identity than to any loyalty to the artificial quote-unquote nations created by the colonial powers. That's a good section right there. I'm going to read that again for all, 6 of the listeners right now. It is a cliche of the independence era that it was much easier for Africans to make the leap from local and ethnic allegiances to a sense of Pan-African identity than to any loyalty to the artificial nations created by the colonial powers. It is worth considering whether Pan-Africanism has become necessary to rescue these artificial post-colonial states from impending disaster, a disaster that has already struck many of them. And that's the point. That's the point of Pan-Africanism to me, really. And I see folks are saying it nowadays. I don't know if folks are saying it nowadays in light of the ADOS and FBA groups talking about Pan-Africanism is dead. But more and more I see folks are saying these days that Pan-Africanism, as of now, is a pipe dream. As of now, Pan-Africanism is really a thought that we haven't seen really put into effect. And once put into effect, to me, what it's supposed to do, it's supposed to stop the collapse of nation states like Nigeria, right? It's supposed to right the wrongs of, of them following the ways of the colonizers, right? And it's supposed to stop them from pure collapse. And it's supposed to save its people. And that's really what we got to be working towards, right? We have to save the continent. The trick bag there is that so much players have problems, both in the continent and outside, in the diaspora. It's hard to get folks to say, hey, screw my problems. Let's fix the continent first. And that's by design, of course. And that's the thing that we're going to have to really come and sit down and figure out, right? But let me finish this off. These states are not natural. They're not even arbitrary. Random lines, they are not even arbitrary random lines on a map. They were deliberately designed to facilitate outside divide and rule manipulation. Consequently, they will either unite into a greater federation or federations, or they will continue to collapse one by one. Social scientists must remember what states are. They are institutions that attempt to monopolize force in order to control a territory and extract a surplus from it. The Nigerian state was created first by the Royal Niger Company, then by Frederick Lugard and his West African frontier force. Lugard built an army of quote-unquote middle belt minorities to conquer the Sokoto Caliphate before using the institutions of the Caliphate to control the middle belt, eventually extending the system of indirect rule to the whole country, employing a surplus from the south to subsidize the north, and perfecting one of the most effective forms of divide and rule ever devised in Africa, if not the world. This same middle belt dominated army held Nigeria together in the Biafran War. It is still predominantly composed of middle belt of middle belters. Any serious look at Nigeria must consider the middle belt central, and not only in the geographical sense. The fact, unnoted in any of these books, that the current ruling PDP began as an attempt to create an autonomous middle belt political force is only more evidence of this. That last part, this last few paragraphs were real tight in this essay, right? Social scientists must remember what states are. Institutions that attempt to monopolize force in order to control a territory and extract a surplus from it. Isn't that Hegel? Isn't that a Hegel thought? Right? In the chat room, the Pro-Black Perspective says, quote, states are institutions that attempt to monopolize force in order to control a territory and extract a surplus from it. So yeah, I see only felt that that little sentence there as much as I did, right? I do believe that's a European thought too. I think that's a Hegel. I think that's Hegel's thought about a state is where you monopolize force, right, in order to control a territory. Yeah, but that's the paper, right? Like I told you, it wasn't going to be a long paper tonight. The trouble with Nigeria. What did you guys think of that paper, right? What do you guys think of that paper? Before I go, I want to read a short article from recently, within the last year, While Nigeria is still struggling at 60, but hope is still alive. This is from October 2020. All right. Nigeria's population is estimated at over 200 million, which means the country has skilled and unskilled labor in abundance. The population also makes it a fertile ground for global trade. Nigeria is also rich in mineral reserves. It is sub-Saharan Africa's largest and the world's 13th largest producer and exporter of oil. These endowments should have made Nigeria one of the key destinations for global investment. And with its wealth in petroleum and natural resources, as well as its vast agricultural potential, Nigeria should have by now become Africa's undisputed economic giant. However, 60 years after independence, Nigeria, like a vehicle struggling to climb a hilly road, has yet to achieve its potential. Its large population has thus become a source of weakness, not strength. With mass unemployment and overstretching of inadequate and poorly maintained infrastructure, many Nigerians have had to seek their fortunes abroad. Smaller nations such as Ghana, Rwanda, Ivory Coast, Qatar, and United Arab Emirates are beginning to catch up. At the same time, big corporations from the industrialized and wealthy countries in Europe and South Asia find the Nigerian business climate inauspicious. That's largely due to decaying infrastructure, corruption, and security and insecurity. Big European corporations have over the years shut down or relocated their Nigerian manufacturing plants. They point to a lack of stable electricity supply and endemic corruption, both of which impede their smooth operation. You know, I like to hear Europeans complain about corruption, like they aren't the arbiters of corruption. Right? So there's a section of this article called "There Was a Giant." At independence, all eyes were on the most populous black country on earth. For good reason. Nigerians were high flyers in intellectual and educational endeavors, business, international diplomacy, and in military and political leadership. In continental leadership, only Ghana rivaled Nigeria just before independence. When Ghana's Kwame Nkrumah was deposed in a coup, attention shifted to Nnamdi Azikiwe, Obafemi Awolowo, and Ahmadu Bello, Nigerian political leaders who were also great leaders of thought. Nigeria provided leadership and enormous support to the United Nations peacekeeping missions in Congo and other countries. It led the movement for the end to apartheid rule in southern African countries, including South Africa, Northern Rhodesia, now Zambia, and Southern Rhodesia, Zimbabwe. It supported other liberation movements, including those of Namibia, Angola, Mozambique, and Western Sahara. In the 1970s, 1980s, and 1990s, Nigeria's influence in the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, right, OPEC, was so monumental that it rose to the leadership for decades. The country's economic muscle made it more politically relevant in Africa, and by the mid-80s, its voice was always sought on resolution of intra-state conflicts. The African Union, an economic community of Western African states, regarded the country as their live wire, and to some extent they still do. So this section is called The Fall. The journalist and author Carl Mayer, in his classic This House Has Fallen, Nigeria in Crisis, cites a litany of problems as remote causes of the fall of Nigeria. These include succession of failed administrations, political instability, which to me are the same, or at least go hand in hand, structural adjustment program, which destroyed the local economy, moral bankruptcy in public institutions, military misadventure up to 1993, the season of anomie occasioned by the annulment of the 1993 presidential elections, and the international backlash and religious and ethnic bigotry. So this review that I just read touched on each of these things right? Some things more than others. You know, we talked about the religious and the ethnic bigotry. They briefly talked about the 1993 presidential election, right? They don't go as far as to mention that it was annulled, but they do mention it. Moral bankruptcy in public institutions. The structural adjustment program, which destroyed the local economy. We didn't talk about that. Political instability, succession of failed administration. Right, but that paper that we just read covered all of those things, and so it's, you know, it still stands up. What are the reasons for the fall or the falling of Nigeria? In the chat room, Home Alone 11. Haven't seen Home Alone 11 in a minute. Peace to you. Home Alone 11 says Angola. I don't know what the question Angola is, but we're talking about Nigeria. So Home Alone, you gotta let us know what the real question is, right? The Nigerian scholar Egosa Osage, author of Crippled Giant, agrees with Mayer. He also identifies immediate triggers of state failure, which include the growing rot in public bureaucracy, sleaze in the oil sector and overdependence on oil revenue, public office allure, which has attracted more thieves and charlatans to politics, the ceaseless plunder of the national treasury, and a lack of public accountability. A lack of commitment by leaders and the people to the Nigerian project, a united, stable, developed, and prosperous country, and flooding of the polity with hardline ethnic or proto-nationalists in the country of over 250 groups will inexorably land the country in destruction. Yeah, I mean, that's what will happen, right? To use old saying from, you know, old biblical saying, you know, you can't serve too many masters, you know? And that's why I say, personally, I say Africa has to lessen, how do I put this? You have to lessen that, that tribal stuff. I'm not saying to, you know, I saw someone talk about this on Twitter, how it is you want me to give up a long history of being a certain tribe just to be black. And I thought that was a gross statement, right? How do I give up a long, can't find the word, but long, glorious history of being a part of this certain tribe, right? Just to be black. Or just to be African, maybe. I think the person said black, right? But you're not looking at the trouble, right, with what goes hand in hand with constantly putting these tribes first. Then there is insecurity, which for the past 10 years has been intractable. Insecurity refers to the absence of internal stability or safety and a state of vulnerability to internal danger and threats. Insecurity arises from a weak and compromised national security architecture, which has been one of the stumbling blocks to Nigeria's realization of its development potential. Put differently, while several other factors have combined over the decades to hold Nigeria down, the horrific state of security in the past 10 years has weakened the fabric of the state. Our study shows that the frequency of insurgent attacks has resulted in collateral damage to the peace, stability, development, and sovereignty of Nigeria. We also discovered that the present government has not been decisive enough in tackling insecurity. That's why I said I agree with the statement that the point of building a nation is for is to have peace. It's for your people to have some internal peace. But to be prepared to protect your people from outside war. You can't have you can't nation build you can't nation build where there's no peace. You don't have no peace, you have no stability. You have no stability, you have instability, you have a difficulty to develop. And with that difficulty to develop, you have a difficulty to obtain and maintain any type of sovereignty. This is why there's little peace in many countries in the continent. This is why there's always wars and rumors of war. Because these folks who we're up against understand that once there's wars and rumors of war going on in a place, I don't care how much natural resources they have and how much potential and ability they have to be one of the top countries or top nations in the world. With that internal strife going on, you cannot maintain nationhood. And that's something we have to really think about and talk about and work on if we want to talk about building up Africa or helping rebuild Haiti or whatever. We got to start talking about the instability, right, between different peoples or minorities or ethnicities or tribe, whatever it is, inside these nations. We got to tackle that problem. With no peace, there's nothing else that's going to really happen in that in that nation. Right? To continue, the overused and poorly trained military is becoming less fit to fight Boko Haram, secure the borders, or sustain the country's previously enviable image. The police secures little or nothing, is corrupt and inefficient, and has become a big burden to the state. Ordinary citizens resort to legitimate self-help or criminal ways to survive, at home and abroad. No one cares. The image problem soars. Can Nigeria reverse the decline and spring up again? Omalone 11 still hasn't answered that question of Angola yet, but we're talking Nigeria. So we bring it to the section of this article called Happily Ever After is Possible. Quote, no condition is permanent, end of quote. Scream inscriptions on many commercial vehicles on the streets of Lagos. So, change is possible. But first, there has to be a mental and moral reorientation. Who will start it? If the government is irresponsibly disconnected from its role, civil society organizations should take up the task. Religious organizations with their massive and committed followers have a role to play in reorientation and rebirth. Closely following this will be a social revolution. This will flow from a reborn mind. Mental reorientation produces a decent moral consciousness. And when it is on a massive scale, society will change. For its part, government has to truly commit to fight corruption. Corruption has bled Nigeria to a near death. It could cost up to 37% of GDP by 2030 if not dealt with immediately. When honesty is rewarded and corrupt acts are publicly punished, more Nigerians will more likely embrace honesty in their endeavors. Government should purge itself of corrupt elements and prosecute those found culpable. This internal purge will not only show commitment and the will to fight corruption, but will also serve as a deterrent to others across the country. So now we're in the section of the article called The Way Forward. A paper I co-authored argues that national integration and its benefits can be realized only with the development and entrenchment of a supportive public culture. Nigerians must understand, respect, and tolerate differences occasioned by sociocultural diversity, and also develop new institutions and mechanisms that address poverty, revenue allocation, and other national issues peacefully. Nigeria can transform its potential into success. With a huge population, its citizens can be mobilized and empowered to engage in manufacturing as China, Singapore, and South Korea have done. This will change the society from a consuming country to a powerhouse in manufacturing and exportation. And that's really what you want your nation to be, by the way. Right? Like, if you look at the population of black folks in America, they're more so, in fact, a consuming population. Right? They're not a powerhouse of manufacturing and exportation. Although a lot of the culture in black society in America, within the American nation, is exported, but black folks don't own it. Right? Other folks own what you're doing, right? And they're manufacturing and exporting it and lining their pockets. Lastly, at 60, Nigeria should not be groping in the dark. There have been numerous wasted opportunities, no doubt, but it takes just a right turn at any second for a vehicle in the middle of nowhere to find its bearing. Right? This paper that I'm reading, that you can't see on screen, but this paper, who's this paper written by? This paper was written by Sharif Folarin, right? Professor of International Relations, Covenant University. Okay? And to me, I like what Sharif is saying here. It denotes some solutions. And it's stuff that I was talking about independently before I even read the article. You gotta get rid of, you gotta put down that tribalism. The continent should come first, not the tribe. Right? We should be practicing continent first ideology. Right? And again, if we're talking Pan-Africanism, that's exactly what Pan-Africanism encompasses as well, continent first ideology. Home Alone 11 in the chat room says, I was wondering how Amilcar Cabral got the distinctive nations to focus and liberate the peoples from Mozambique to Angola. Oh, that's what you meant by Angola. Okay. Yeah, I mean, yeah, okay. So that's something I'm going to read on. I'm going to read a paper about that maybe on the next show. Right? To show where others have kind of been able to get the people not to be so centered on tribe, but centered on nation. Right? You gotta get, you have to come off of that. And again, I used to think that that whole tribe thing was a construct pushed on Africans, but when I look at the history that's going on, right? Even if I compare it to like what's going on like in certain parts of the Caribbean, because of the mixed, you know, certain mixes of population in certain islands, right? I can see where this becomes a problem. But for nations of African people, of black people, we really should sidestep this problem, right? The very big problem is this ethnicity problem, right? But then we have the problems of, you know, failed administrations and military coups and, you know, just general political instability, right? We have moral bankruptcy, and that moral bankruptcy doesn't come from something natural within us, although it is a capability of man to be morally bankrupt in general, right? But because you put people in a position where, you know, and I've talked about this in the show in the past, where they're dealing with big money in government. I don't care how poor the world labels a country, there's money in government. People are greasing each other's palms all the time, and there's an opportunity to have your palm greased. But we need people, again, this is where the education comes in, who have been educated in understanding that it's about the group and not yourself as an individual. Forgo the greasing of palm stuff and think about the continent and the people of Africa in general. Think about them first and foremost. Stop thinking about yourself, right? That's an educational problem as well. People think it's just some moral thing, but you have to be educated in morals. The fact that Nigeria is so big in oil, to the point it was considered like a leadership in OPEC, right? But you're not distributing the funds from oil the way you should be. So there's people suffering because of it, and because you have so many people, that means you have so many more people suffering. Again, one of the ideals of nationhood and nation building is to create peace for the people within the nation. There's certain things you got to do to be able to create that peace. I want to thank all you guys for listening in tonight. Hope you enjoyed. The paper was a review of some books, but it still shed light on the Nigerian problem. And this article kind of summed it up nicely at the end here. There's things here we all need to take stock of. We got to get off of, for those of us in the diaspora, we have to get off of this idea of, where our ancestors were dropped off at a port, from a slave ship. We got to start working towards power. When you're working towards power, that's the last thing I said. When you're working towards power, let's say you're just working towards power in terms of money. The reality of it is you work with whoever you got to work with to make that money. Any and everyone you can work with to make that money. Now, when we're talking about power, and especially black power or African power, you got to work with people. You got to work with people from America. You got to work with people from Jamaica, the Bahamas, Trinidad. You got to work with folks from Haiti. You got to work with folks from Angola. Brits, black Brits. You got to work with all of us. We got to start learning how to work with each other. Put aside, you could revel in where you're from later. Right now, we got work to do as a collective. I like the question that Home Alone came through with finally about Mozambique to Angola. I'm going to talk about that maybe in the next episode. So you guys make sure to tune in. Again, I want to thank you guys who were here tonight. I know I had Home Alone 11. I had the Pro-Black Perspective. Kevin Care42 was here before. NYC Beauties was here as well. And for those of you who are quiet but listening to the show, I want to even thank you guys too. Didn't see KW Don 7 tonight. There he is. KW Don 7 came up just as I mentioned him. Kevin Care42 says, FFBA, these people are disruptors. KW Don 7 says in an interview on the Cows radio program, Michael Bradley, the author of The Iceman's Inheritance, was asked whether or not Nigeria can make it as an economic powerhouse. He said no. Do the goofy. All right, I'm gonna wait for KW Don to explain that last part again. He said no, do the goofy. Okay. I'm sure KW Don is gonna correct that in a second. But yeah, that's the thing, man. We got to organize for power. And in organizing, we can't worry about who's Hausa, Fulani, and who's Yoruba, and all this old stuff, In fact, if we focus on those things, fact of the matter is, we probably won't get along, right? If you come to me and you want to work on some type of organizing, or let's say you want to work on school curriculum, right? But you're a staunch Christian. You want to bring that Christian stuff. We can't work together. Leave that Christian stuff aside and let's work on the African-centered aspect of the curriculum, right? Those different labels, those different qualifiers, if you will, we gotta leave those alone. Oh, KW Don 7 says no due to the goofy religions and the goofy tribes. Okay, now I follow you, KW Don 7. Thank you for that. I know I thought it's strange I didn't see you here, but of course you were here all along, and I agree with that. I agree with Michael Bradley, and I agree with your comment that come off of this religious stuff, come off of the tribal stuff, and let's organize for power. That's the only way you could do it. You have to have peace to have a nation. That's just the fact of the matter. And if you build a nation and that nation starts to fall into squabbles and stuff, you're going to lose your nation. You have to have peace. And so with that, I want to wish peace to all of you who have been listening to the show tonight. I thank you again for coming out and hanging with me while we read through a paper. I'll be back again today, Thursday. I'll be back again on Saturday. Perhaps I'll read that paper about how Cabral was able to rise above the issues of tribalism, etc. And we'll do that on Saturday, perhaps. KW Don 7 says, no African state will rise and a religious republic, it must be secular. I just got off work. Oh, okay, KW Don 7. Just got off work, okay? But yeah, it has to be secular. It has to be. We have to have a society where, to use a crazy analogy, we're all wearing overalls, right? We're all wearing the same color overalls, the same steel-toe shoes, and we just got to get to work. We ain't got time to be talking Sharia law, and we ain't got time to be talking, tribal, tribe stuff and this, that, and the other. Just get to work. And that's the problem with Nigeria right there. That's the trouble with Nigeria. I want to thank you guys again for coming out. I'll see you guys again on Saturday. All right? Peace to everyone again.
Thanks for listening to the Bitter Medicine Podcast with your host, Koku. If you like what you just heard, we hope you pass along our web address, bittermedicineblogs.com, to your friends and colleagues, and share our show to all your social media. Be sure to check out our archive section on our website for previous podcasts. This has been a KWAZ radio production. Join us next time for another session of the Bitter Medicine Podcast. Follow us on Facebook at Bitter Medicine Show, Twitter, Bitter Meds, Tumblr, Bitter Meds, Instagram, Bitter Medicine.